Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hola, lady love. Welcome back to the potty. And it's a big welcome back. By the time this episode goes live, it will have been over a month. And I didn't even share with you or announce that I was taking time off, because there was two reasons why, actually. First of all, there was this little piece of me that had me thinking, oh, maybe I might feel like pulling out the mic and recording some episodes whilst I'm traveling, which I can confirm I did not. I did take the mic with me though. And the second was, I would say, for the first few days that I was on leave, I felt very conflicted and really challenged by taking time off, specifically the potty and also Instagram. And I really got to see and be present with my nervous system, but see how my nervous system and how my nervous system and I were hooked into the rules, the gameplay of the systems and structures around that. And, specifically the algorithm. So if you don't have a business online, you might not know, but with Instagram, there's all of these rules. Yeah. And there's a game plan for how to be on there, for it to be worth your while, for your account to be receiving reach. And with the potty, what showed up for me, and this is something I have been working with for my whole professional life, I would say, was this imprint of what it means to be professional, and that taking a break or creating an inconsistency in the podcast was unprofessional. And so I had this gift of an opportunity to really lean in and take more of a stand on fucking off the systems, rules, the patriarchy around that had an imprint, and really standing even stronger in, just because those things are common, just because it's dictated that is how things are done, does not mean that it's right for me. And whilst they're common, it doesn't mean that I am going to bring them into my normal way of being and my normal lifestyle. And what leads my choices in my life is my needs, my values, what lights me up inside, which is really interesting, because I'm excited to have this conversation with you today about how I, inverted commas, lost my motivation and zest for life. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to share about that inner conflict piece. It was just cool and interesting to observe. No qualms whatsoever about pausing any other part of the business. It was really, those two, those two things had their hooks in me. No more. So let's dive in. I've actually made some notes and a bit of a structure for this episode, which is very unlike me. Normally I just turn on the mic and yabber away. But I really wanted to get clear on how I wanted to deliver this for you, because otherwise I could have probably spoken for hours. I think I'm going to start with a little bit of a life update and basically, how did I find myself here where I was having this experience where I could have easily told the story that my motivation and my zest for life had gone missing, that it was lost. And we're going to get into why I don't believe in that further along in the conversation. But I wanted to begin with, how I arrived to this place, which is, it's been a really unexpected first 6 months to the year, which has kind of been a theme for the last couple of years for me. But this 6 months particularly, because I can remember at the start of the year, in fact, I was with my girlfriend on New Year's Day, saying to her, I'm just so excited because there's no chaos on my doorstep. There's no big bundle of growth or elevation that's waiting for me. I can find that and create that and choose that if I want that, but it kind of feels optional. And I'm really excited for that for the 6 months ahead. And what actually happened was that, so I knew I was relocating to my first, second, third new location in what would have been just over 12 months. Let me figure this out, because it really annoys me when I say a time frame and then later on I reflect back and I'm like, that's a little bit inaccurate. So I left Melbourne end of 2021, which means 2022, and we're in 2023. So it was three moves over 12 months, which I've moved a lot in the last 14 years. But these ones were particularly significant because they were all to new locations where I had, I knew 1 to 2 people. So minimal existing community and rituals and habits and routines. Whereas when I'd moved a lot prior, most of that had been around Melbourne. And so, I was really excited. It was a huge accomplishment also to be moving into a home that was just for me, a beautiful 2-bedroom townhouse right beside the mountain, and something that I had super, super consciously and clearly worked my freaking tush off in the 6 months prior, both with the inner work, subconscious patterns, deeper healing around money and business, and also restructuring my business. Because, and I mentioned this in a podcast episode previously, my business model had been tailored towards parenting and stepping into that role of mother. So a model that was scaling down. And then when I moved through a separation, that was no longer the case. And when I wanted to live a lifestyle where, I wasn't in shared living, and really a lifestyle that normally in your 30s, 2 people would be contributing to, but hey, it's just me doing all the contributing. I decided I was going to have that and I wanted that. And so arriving to this place where I relocated to this third location on the sunny coast, at the start of this year, I was like, things are looking up, things are shining. And was really excited to spend lots of time and intention around grounding into community and putting myself in new places and just establishing a lifestyle here, which I was definitely able to do to some degree. And also what happened was the most unforeseen by me. I'm sure many, many other people would have been able to see it, but I was so ignorant and so naive about what it meant to be bringing on team in my business and to be building out a new short course and to have a newly established podcast and to be continuing the running of everything else I'd already established in the business as well. And so in my head, my thinking was, okay, I'm bringing on team, amazing. I'm going to be able to hand off some of my workload. The business isn't going to demand as much of me, when in actual fact, it was the fucking opposite.
And every business owner, it was funny having a conversation with my accountant about this actually, but every business owner I've spoken to has just looked at me when I've told this story and nodded. And they're like, yeah, your workload actually at least doubles for a good 3 months, right? And it's a decent amount of time before having team actually pays off. And they're feeling really confident and certain and clear in their role and in the systems, and you're on the same page on how you want things done. But also one of the things that I did not anticipate, and, I'm even learning this to a deeper level, just sharing with you right here, right now, is that in the handing off of those tasks, it also meant that I was free, which was part of the plan, to be more in the relationship building, content creation spaces of the business, communicating with my audience. And that is a lot of on power, especially for someone who's introverted, which is probably going to be something that we'll touch on in this conversation too. I am extremely introverted. Yeah. And just a lot of time in the creative space, creating content. So that also means, really tethered to the home, because, the mic needs power, you're on screen, there's a setting, lighting, all of these things that meant I was more restricted and less able to co-work with my girlfriends or go and sit in a cafe, and just less flexible. So that was really, really interesting. Unexpected, and also, I'm just going to say it, so undesired. Like the first 6 months of this year, and I'm speaking specifically to the strategic growth side of the business, for me, and you might have heard me say this before as well, coaching clients is like not even work to me. I adore it. I don't feel like I even think while I'm doing it. It feels so natural and organic to me. I love it. It energizes me. It makes me so happy. I'm like bouncing off the walls after doing that. The strategic growth side of the business, however, I'm here for it. I enjoy it, but also there's definitely seasons where I wish I could magically have the freedom of working for myself, not having to answer to anybody, deciding what I do every day, being in complete ownership and in complete leadership of the creative direction and expression of the brand. But, not have to deal with all of the heavy, sometimes responsibility pieces, and the deadlines and the pressure and the stress that can come with that. And I'm laughing because there were 4 key reasons I started a business. And one was that it would place me in a space where I had this untapped, never-ending access to growth opportunities, as in personal growth. So, yeah. But for the first 6 months of this year, it really was this dance between me feeling, meeting, expressing, moving through and releasing resentment towards the strategic side of my business of, this is not what, I just went hard for 6 months last year. I wanted some relief. And really feeling at times, and I literally said this, but feeling at times like my business was like this annoying, wet, smelly dog that just would not stop following me around. And it's cool, right? Because personal power and coming into the facts of reality and really exploring the depth of self-leadership in life, ownership, responsibility, our personal power is a huge part of how I teach women to liberate themselves and free themselves from these shackles that they feel that life has around them, that they are so stuck and they feel hopelessness, they feel defeated, they feel exhausted. And so
I want to share that part with you because there were like multiple times I had to keep coming back to my truth and back to my power. And for sure, I definitely could have hit pause on some of these projects. I definitely could have cancelled them. And also, when I looked to the longer term vision rather than the immediate gratification of those painful moments, it was still really important to me that I dug deep and committed, even though when I initially committed to these projects and to these key focuses for the first 6 months of the year in business, I didn't anticipate and I didn't foresee what it was actually going to ask. And for me, the decision felt like, okay, this is a really instrumental part of my business growth and I can slow it down, or I can change my mind. I can, what is the word I want? It is not coming to me. Like erase, get rid of some of these projects. Eliminate. I think that's what I'm after. Eliminate. And also it feels like there would be a really, really big impact on my business if I do that. And this work has to be done at some point in time and we're here. So let's buckle in and let's do it. And as I'm sharing in this podcast, a flow-on effect from that and being in that season of business when I was in a new location with very minimal community meant that I was very limited in choosing that for my business. The choice was not as available to be out in community and to be living life and to be adventuring and to be meeting new people. And that was extremely frustrating and felt really, really defeating at times. And it's been, a very lonely 6 months. I've got incredible people around me, but yeah, living alone, working alone, and really the tethering for the tasks that I was doing in my business, needing to be at home a lot of the time was, super, super lonely. And so that is how I came to find myself in this place where, only a few short weeks ago, I was feeling really unmotivated, really disconnected, and like my zest for life had gone missing, right? And so I want to talk to you about how I navigated that, how I responded to that, what I discovered, because there's two parts to this. One is like, how do I respond to that on like a strategic or a, like I talk about practical tools a lot. What's the practical tool to respond to that? And then in using that practical tool or that system, what did I get to discover about myself? So let's go there. Let's talk about that. Two reflections I have as well that I thought were so incredibly what word do I want to use here? Eye-opening, but also really actually quite pleasant. And just intriguing to see were, first of all, I probably should share. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you won't know. So I had marked this time off to go on an overseas trip. And I did so much research, hours and hours of research, whilst also holding the end part of this season in business. So it was not convenient and not enjoyable, but so much research on different overseas locations. First, I thought Bali, and I was like, nah, feels so overdone for me. I think I've been 5 times before. And particularly for the type of holiday I thought I wanted, I didn't feel like it would meet my needs. Research Vietnam, Philippines, for a number of different reasons, like they just weren't going to work, and I was really deeply attuned to the fact that it felt like they weren't meant to be working, like there was a sign in that for me. And I was so homesick for my hometown in Melbourne in Victoria. And I was missing my family. I hadn't been back in, I think it was 8 months. I'd seen them because they'd come and visited maybe multiple times. But yeah, just really, really homesick and craving that. And it didn't make sense to me that I would take time off to go back and use that as a holiday. Normally I would do that as a working holiday. Like I would just go and stay in those environments and soak up those relationships and keep my business running at the same time. But again, I just accepted. I was like, okay, this seems like what is meant to be. It feels like the most exciting. It's the thing I can get the most excited about right now. So that's what I'm going to do. So I actually ended up heading to Brisbane, spend a weekend with my dad for his birthday. Then I headed down the Gold Coast, caught up with some friends there, and also had a new brand shoot done, which I'm so freaking excited to share with you. Back up to Brisbane, then I flew to Melbourne for 10-ish days, I think, then came back through Brisbane for another couple of nights and got back to the sunny coast yesterday. And so two contrasts that have been really beautiful and really pleasant to observe. One is, in the past, my relationships with family have not always been something that has felt exciting or regulated or brought me insane joy. Yeah. It's taken a lot of healing to get to that place. And I shared on my stories on Instagram this week, at different times with both of my parents, I've taken 1 or 2 year breaks from that relationship to facilitate my healing. And it was really quite intimate and quite moving to have the reflection that in this time that I had off, where in the past I would have wanted to travel away from home base, I had this deep desire to travel toward home base, which just felt so affirming and such a testament to all of the healing and growth that I've done. I used to have such poor boundaries with my family and the behaviors that I would accept and tolerate. And I also wasn't able to advocate for my own needs and help them to understand me as well, because I was disconnected from my body and my nervous system, and I didn't understand the intelligence that emotions bring us. So that was really cool to see. And it was also really cool to see the first time I went back to Melbourne after moving interstate, I literally wanted to book a flight home. I looked up flights, and nothing to do with my family. Looked up flights, and I'm pretty sure it was maybe Easter, and they were just outrageously priced. But it was so reflective of how transient I had been. Must have been, I think, close to 3 months, 2 or 3 months when I left Victoria, just traveling around and landing in lots of different places before I landed in a permanent place. And then within 6 weeks of being there, I had to move on. Those horrible floods came through and the property was no longer livable. And so then I'd landed up in Brisbane with my dad, which was, such a beautiful, safe base, but no real feeling of like completion in my move. And so, when I went back that first time, it was very reflective of how much I was just craving this groundedness and this home and this sanctuary that was just mine to rest in and relax in and live from. And it was really nice to see that this time when I went back, the trip home was essential because I was so craving that stimulation and that connection and that variety and that adventure of moving around, which is very cool because grounded was the theme word that I set for the start of this year, because I could tell it was such an important need of mine, and it was something I'd been working towards amongst all the transient nature of my movements for the years prior. And so talking about the lessons, the epiphany moments that I've had and the reminders that I've had as I've explored the last few weeks of going from feeling stagnant and uninspired and disconnected, and really like a little lifeless. One of those is that box of groundedness as a theme for this year is motherfucking ticked. Like, it's got multiple ticks in it. And you know, I've actually realized as part of this travel too, oh my gosh, part of the reason for this stagnation and lack of motivation and lack of zest for life is I've achieved the goals that I set. And so subconsciously I've been aware, without consciously at the forefront of my mind being aware, that I don't have an anchor. I don't have a clear purpose and meaning right now. You can call them goals, as to why I'm doing each day. And that is extremely important to me, because a double-edged sword, but I contemplate very deeply all of my choices, all of my behaviors. And I'm naturally someone who desires to be very present with life and live life in a meaningful way. And so it becomes problematic for me when I don't have that clarity of purpose or the vision that I'm working towards to anchor deeply into. And so I've changed the word. I needed to review the word, and I don't think it was the last potty episode, but maybe episode 25, where I actually talked about the importance of reviewing your goals, your vision for 2023. Just couldn't quite fit it in for myself yet, but this is a beautiful example of how important that is, because I actually need to swing back to the opposite of groundedness now, like not in an undoing way, but that's sorted. That is squared away. And now what is going to bring me the most joy and fulfillment in life is adventure, and almost this little flavor of irresponsibility in amongst that adventure, which I definitely brought to my time in Melbourne, like saying yes to things I would not normally say yes to, or I would put in the too hard basket. And I just felt so alive for doing that, which was amazing. I can definitely fall into the grandma character. Like, I love being in bed early. I love things being organized and mellow and low key. Like I mentioned before, I'm very introverted. I'm so happy in my own company. I'm so good at spending time on my own, and that can tend to head in the direction of too much of that. And so coupling that with a year where, you know, most of my capacity was taken up by business, and for the second time in my life, actually, China was when I was living in China and recovering from chronic fatigue was the other. But one of the few times in my life I didn't have an abundance of established community around me to draw on. It was very easy for me to curl up in my introverted shell. So yeah, that's been really, really important. I feel like I was going somewhere with that, but I've lost the thread. Grounded, adventurous, irresponsibility. Yeah, I think that was it. So just saying yes to more things. I already knew that there was a thread of, before, you know, I booked this trip back to Melbourne a month before I left, but with the commitments with the business, I couldn't go any earlier. So it was also sitting in this space of very clearly knowing what felt like was going to correct this or bring this back into balance. But yeah, in honoring the full spectrum and full range of what I value and what's important to me, and holding in integrity in that, I held and I let it play its course, knowing that I was going to get there. But before I went, community has just really started to open up here for me, which has been so, so beautiful. And I was starting to go to a lot more events and spend more time with people. And that was a thread that I could tell, because that would be my glimpses of feeling motivated, my glimpses of feeling alive. And so we are going to move into part of this conversation is very soon is going to be, you know, what is the practical tool? How do I respond to this? And one of those is like, rather than drawing on the feedback that is maybe the majority of what you're receiving. So the majority of the feedback might be, oh, like I feel complacent. I feel unmotivated. I feel stuck. I feel disconnected, is really drawing on those more minor threads where you might have a muted or a really subtle experience of the contrast to that. And that was something I definitely picked up on. It was like, I feel back to being alive when I would be driving home from those events or at those events, which was really beautiful. I'm just looking at these notes here. So yes, reaching the goals, right? So I shared with you how much of last year the vision was towards building the availability for me to live a lifestyle that felt fulfilling. And so I'm here living that. And yeah, my heart, my soul is looking for that what's next. And not from a more, but from a, hey, babe, like where should we steer the ship next? And where are we going to put that anchor down? Which feels really cool. So I'm going to be spending some time soon, and I've already had quite a few journaling sessions and just reflection moments, but nothing really penned out formally around, what's important to me next? What do I want next? And what will that get me more of? And how will I get to feel from having that? A lot of the questions that I've shared in past podcast episodes around goals and setting your vision. I had lunch with an old friend of mine when I was in Melbourne, and one of the epiphany moments I had from our conversation, and you know, he was reflecting one thing back to me, and I was able to hear what was not true for me in that, which then allowed me to see, okay, for the last 2 years, I've been deeply immersed with multiple different coaches at different times, personal and professional. And I've been very, very intentionally and strategically growing the business, which is actually very different. Yeah. So strategically growing the business is very different to just running a business with the intention of growth humming along as well. Yeah. And if I was to, I guess, explain it for any listeners who don't run a business, strategically growing a business is almost like renovating a house, or like demolishing a house and rebuilding it, or adding another level, or totally remodeling it. Whereas I would say running a business with growth humming along in the mix there is maybe deciding you're going to repaint the insides, or refurnish, or change what you use each room for. So it feels very different, and that felt really empowering to me and relieving as well, and exciting and re-energizing to realize, okay, there is a difference between what I have been doing and what I will be doing in the next 6 months. And the cool thing is that the 6 months ahead for the remainder of this year, and this is probably why I'm so freaking excited about them, is what I had planned for the start of this year. Hopefully I'm not recording another podcast like this at the end of this year. I truly don't feel like I will be. Another massive learning and reminder that I had was the richness and productivity that comes from having fun. Yeah. My little introverted self needs to just get out there and have a good time. Saying yes to more things. Being involved, having fun, going on adventures, trying different things. Instead of prioritizing, I think I'd actually rather go to bed on time, or I don't really have anything to wear to that thing and I can't really be bothered figuring that out, which is pretty much my MO. Really inviting myself into more yes around that. And one of the ways I've done this, so you can create your own version of this, is by creating this little rule of, if this is something that I genuinely am interested in and that aligns with my values, I need to say yes. Yeah, when I'm invited somewhere or an opportunity comes up, just for a little while, just to re-engage the engine, just to remind myself of how to do that. And actually, a big conversation I had with another girlfriend when I was in Melbourne is, I really feel like my introvertedness was trained at a whole other level. And it's not even introvertedness as well. It's what my subconscious was exposed to after 12 months of lockdowns in Melbourne. Insane lockdowns, right? Gyms weren't open, cafes weren't open, restaurants weren't, nothing was open. And at points in time, we know what that was like, especially if you're a Melburnian. And then, moving to Byron, experiencing those floods, being there and not, having the opportunity to integrate into community before I moved. And then moving to Brisbane and definitely feeling a little bit more established in terms of community, but on the weekends, unless I traveled up or down the coast, there really wasn't anybody around for me to spend time with that I knew. My gym was closed on the weekends. And I also knew it was temporary, and I went into a very conscious business focus and hole during that time. And then, moving up here. So there hasn't been a rhythm for me over the last 2 or 3 years to really fall back into. And I think more than I realized, I became accustomed to, being around home and not being out in community. So that was really cool to also learn and realize as well. But really the richness and the productivity that comes from fun, which I'm going to speak to in the strategic and practical tool part. So let me have a little look. Is there anything else I want to share? I feel really excited to be coach free for a little while. I finished up with my most recent coach, Meg, at the start of my trip. And it actually feels energizing, relieving in a sense. I feel alive for the first time, I think, in 2 years. And I've definitely taken breaks from having coaches in the past, but there's been a lot going down in the last 2 years, especially with business. I'm excited to be coach free. And there's a part of me that is like, ooh, because at this stage of my healing and growth in life, I engage coaches a lot for companionship, for someone inside my business with me, part of my team, more of a soundboarding. And so to hold the more masculine side of my business as well, so that I'm not doing all of that myself, more of the strategy. And so there is a part of me that is a little bit like, oh, I need to be in charge of all the things. And of course, those coaches have never executed on the work in my business or in my life. But it's an interesting feeling. And when I was journaling on this the other day, there was a little moment of, okay, well, I feel like this could be an initiation into my deeper belief and my deeper understanding of how skilled I am in the business space. So we shall see. What else? Oh, the last thing I learned. The city activates something inside of me. The coast is very, very deliciously sleepy and slow and quiet. And okay, this is what else I also discovered. The coast and even Brisbane they're just so fucking white and privileged. And not that Melbourne is not, but it is definitely less so. And just that diversity, that variety, that exposure, the culture, the fashion, the food, the architecture, there's still very much a city flame alive inside this lady, and it had dimmed right down. It needed to be fanned. And so that is definitely something that I've learned and that I'm going to honor going forwards as well. And so, yeah, this is an example of what plays into the goals that I'll be setting for the next, reason why forwards is I want to be able to go back to Melbourne like at least each quarter. And also just because it's my niece's birthday, just because this thing is happening. And so that brings deep meaning for me in terms of the connection and the presence and the shared experiences in those relationships, but also, my contact and my touch points with the city as well. It was the first time actually since 2019 that I really felt like there was a place for me in that city with my values of truth and freedom. And there was some relief in that and some healing in that as well. Okay, let's move into how do you respond to these scenarios, right? So when you're feeling like there's a lack of motivation, like there's a stuckness, I really enjoy, and I work with this with my clients a lot too, using sounds, not only to explain, but to express from the body. And so there was just this blah, zero fucks vibe going on, and not the energizing kind of I don't give a fuck, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what's happening. More of a so how do we respond to that? And it was really cool for me to not feel deeply concerned that I found myself in this place. It was uncomfortable, but I also knew what had caused it. There were some things that I didn't have complete clarity on, but I was very aware, right? Which we would hope.
Being my profession and all.
So here's what I want to talk about. Motivation and zest for life. Here's why I didn't lose it. Here's why it didn't go missing. So many of us, and I've actually talked about this on the potty before. Here we go again. It's fucking important. So many of us have a misconception about what motivation is and a very, very, very fucking narrow definition of what motivation is. And so what I love to ask women who come to me with this pain point is, well, how do you know when you are motivated? Right? And typically what they'll say to me is, well, I'm achieving this, I'm accomplishing this, I'm ticking this off. Yeah. So, I'm hitting my KPIs at work, or I'm making this many sales, or I'm leading this team, or I'm leading this project and I feel engaged. The house is tidy, the washing isn't overflowing, meal prep is done, I'm consistently exercising, all of these doing, but not just doing, quite structured, routine behaviors and choices. And that is part of feeling motivated. It's not wrong. And also, there's this whole other side to the definition and experience of motivation that so many of us have never been taught, we've never tapped into, and so we haven't been able to understand. And that is that sometimes we are going to feel motivated. If this motivation over here that I've just spoken about was more of the doing and more of the structure and the routine, we're going to feel motivated for more being, for maybe more stillness, maybe more slowness, but also, and in this instance for me, it was definitely not about stillness and slowness. Even though I had been doing lots of doing, it actually wasn't rest and slowness. I wasn't physically burnt out. I was emotionally and spiritually heading in that direction, right? Because sometimes we actually feel motivated to adventure. We feel motivated to play. We feel motivated to connect. We feel motivated to fuck off the structure and the routine, to be free, to feel free, to feel spontaneous. I felt, what I was actually feeling in that turned down experience of motivation and zest for life. Yes, sure, that's what it felt like. But what I was actually experiencing was motivation for change, motivation for variety, motivation for adventure, motivation for irresponsibility. Motivation for play, motivation for contrast, motivation for contrast. For contrast to work, for contrast to slow, sleepy beach town life. Even maybe, I don't know, but even maybe contrast to the climate. I cannot even believe how hot it gets here in summer. Winter here is like Melbourne's summer. It's divine. And for the first time ever, I was excited to experience a bit of Melbourne's winter. So contrast was what I was motivated for. And so if you're feeling this way, if you feel like motivation has gone missing, your spark, your zest, your inspiration, your natural inclination to feel alive and desire and be up and about in life, I want you to ask yourself, what could this actually be showing me I'm motivated towards? What could a contrast be to all the areas I've been gifting my time, my love, my energy, my attention most consistently and most predominantly in the last little while? Very, very fucking revealing, incredibly revealing. Also introspecting, right? And so creating an interrupt to the pattern that is clearly not working if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling demotivated. And my advice is that would be like a short-term, like I'm not talking about making enormous changes or blowing up any areas of your life, but like, how can you create a break? Fresh environments, phenomenal to see things more clearly, right? So it could even just be a weekend away. It could be a day out of your routine. And so how can you create an interrupt to the current pattern of your life so that you can actually get a chance to see what the current pattern of your life is, right? One of my favorite things about holidays and taking breaks is how powerful it is when you actually come back. The holiday's cool too, but there is so much untapped power and knowledge and wisdom in what you experience when you come back to everyday life or the more common version of your life out the other side of that. So that's definitely a practical tool, a strategic approach, and it then facilitates you to do the introspection. So all of these lessons and learnings that I've shared with you didn't just like land in my lap. I used the tools to connect with my nervous system. I reached out to my phenomenal girlfriends and support network and had conversations and asked for reflections from people I deeply trust. I chose to, like I shared with you earlier, pulling that thread that was the minority of my experience instead of just focusing on the majority of my experience. I trusted my intuition and my gut feeling and what I was being shown when, I was trying to find where this overseas trip was meant to be. And it was just like, this doesn't make sense, but it's a no. It's consistently a no. Yeah. Journaling is really, really great for this as well, especially free journaling. Only 3 nights ago, I had 15 minutes before bed and I had no idea what I was going to write. But I just started writing. I wrote down what I would say out loud if I was to be having a conversation with someone that I deeply trusted. And I got a lot more clarity. Powerful. So understanding, number one, understanding the true definition of motivation and life force in our body and in our experience. Number two, the ability to introspect, connect with your nervous system, to get curious, to express emotions, to take a step out and be able to observe what the pattern has been because you're not actually in it, running it. And part of what happens when we do that is we get to see blind spots. And so this was one that popped up for me too whilst I was traveling and right before I went to Melbourne. I had a conversation with my coach, and what she reflected back to me was there's part of you that really thrives and enjoys life being hard. And so I explored that, and it was a harder one to see because life had been hard for the last couple of years, and I've shared some of that already on this podcast, moving through a separation, moving interstate on my own, not knowing what's happening with borders, not being able to move to the state yet that I wanted to move into, going through those floods, and so moving to locations without community. And yet I was definitely making it harder at times than what it needed to be, or I was focusing on all of the hard parts. And so one of the blind spots that I got to see was, oh my gosh, it's less of a blow to my ego if I fail at hard things than if I fail at easy things. And so there's this part of me that sometimes builds things up to convince myself of how hard they are. One, because then I get to see how brilliant I am and how amazing I am if it's hard, right? Because I can't even tell you that I feel like I failed at any of them. Maybe if we like microscopically look in at like different stages of a process of something and like crop out and exclude the bigger plan, for sure I would have felt like things weren't going to plan or hadn't achieved the outcome that I set out to. But yeah, building it up so that if it wasn't to go to plan, or if I was to, quote, fail, that felt easier to accept than something that was maybe not so hard. And so immediately, as soon as I saw that, and I actually took this into my brand shoot, right? Because that's not an environment that I find overly comfortable. I don't identify as a model. And so, yeah, I was building it up. I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is so hard. Rah, 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 blah, 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 blah. And I saw it and I was like, oh, nah, I can actually just have fun feeling awkward. I can just do this because, like, I know how to walk. I know how to dance. I know how to smile. And that's actually all I need to do. I noticed that I wasn't going to allow myself to feel the joy and the fun in the experience of life that this was until I saw that I'd gotten an end result that I was pleased with. And then I would have been like, oh yeah, that was fun. That was cool. That was all right. That was easy. But it wasn't until I'd gotten the outcome that I was going to tell that story. And so I switched and I really started getting curious about all the ways I could start interacting with this already being an easy experience or an easier experience than what I was telling the story to be. Yeah. Essentially, though, my love, the strategic tool, the practical tool here is really understanding what motivation actually means. Yeah. Attuning to and getting really good at understanding what your needs are. And we discover that through completely opening to, welcoming in painful emotions, physical symptoms, negative self-talk as signals from the body. It is the body's language. It cannot speak English. And so it is communicating to you through painful emotions, physical symptoms, and negative self-talk that there is something to be looked at. Yeah. That there is something there for you to pay loving attention to that is deeply important to you. And that when you do that, you will get to move through that discomfort and come out the other side. And in the learnings that you gain, the aha moments that you have, the reminders that you receive as part of that process, you now have the skills and the insights and the knowledge and the nervous system and neurology that is a match for more of what it is that you say you want in life. Gonna leave this one here. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.